We'll let her go. You can use the one she felt check on bread.
Miss Juanita. Miss Sandy.
Are you paying all these people?
Yeah.
Hope you feed the flippers.
She said come to
Jimbo. Miss Brenda.
Taco Bell.
She gotta have free people like she gonna lie to her.
I can't do that. Ready?
Ready.
Good evening. What is something that everybody hates to talk about? Sorrow, death, grief, financial loss within your homes. At some point in everyone's life, you're going to deal with tragedy. What ways it can affect us? How are you going to handle it when that time comes? What are the stages of dealing with death, grief, and sorrow? Never think that you are the exception to the rule. Tragedy can affect anyone, anytime, any place, such as the death of a loved one, the end of a loving partnership, violence, hatred, on that fateful day when you could become stunned and in despair. I researched what tragedy was. The Free Dictionary online states that tragedy is a very sad event. It evokes feelings of sorrow and of grief, a disastrous event, becomes serious illness, financial ruins, even fatality. When I did some research to determine what tragedy is within the world, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, in statistics of 2007, over 2 million people deaths in the U.S. just alone. Heart disease being the leading cause of death in the U.S. They were followed by stroke, cancer, respiratory disease, accidents, diabetes, influenza, and pneumonia. When I think of the ways tragedies affects us in our lives, not only does it affect our country, but it affects my own life as well. Now that we've defined tragedy, let's talk about some things that's happened within our own country and how we have been affected. Our country was hit by adversity in many ways. Two instances that I recall was on September the 11th of 2001. Another one was Tucson, Arizona in January of this year. Both of these are completely different, but our country was devastated, it was traumatized, and it was disturbed. According to Wikipedia, let's recall some of the events around September the 11th of 2001. 19 Al-Qaeda terrorists hijacked 4 commercial planes. 2 planes crashed into the World Trade Center, 1 crashed into the Pentagon, and 1 in a field in Pennsylvania. Some of the passengers and the flight crews tried to take over that plane and redirect it because the hijackers had its target for Washington, D.C., the Capitol building, or the White House. That attack alone killed over 3,000 victims. They included firefighters, paramedics, and police officers. How did our country deal with that horrific tragedy? Many of the parents were challenged in trying to explain to their children what happened and try to minimize their fears about unrealistic purposes that they were going to have to face throughout their future. Our country's leaders wanted us to remain as normal life as possible because of the psychological and economical importance that we faced. Many people in our country canceled their vacations due to the fear of flying and protecting of their families. This soon became an economical issue to New York due to the financial markets, the elevated unemployment rate, and the decrease in airline transportation. The other incident we occurred was back in Tucson, Arizona, back in January 2011. On January 8th, a 22-year-old Tucson, Arizona man opened fire on approximately 20 to 30 people in a supermarket where U.S. Representative Gabrielle Gifford was holding a citizens' meet. Congress are on your corner. 19 people were shot, 6 fatally wounded, including a very innocent 9-year-old little girl. Among the 19, Representative Gifford she was the target of that attack. She was shot in the head at point-blank range. How did Arizonians deal with that same tragedy just like we as individuals today? President Obama called this a shooting, unspeakable tragedy, a senseless, terrible act of violence. The nation came together during this tragedy. During 2011, the Union Address. Members of the House sat together during the State of the Union Address. Regardless of their party, they broke tradition. They left one seat empty in honor of Representative Gifford. In addition to our country, tragedy can strike in our own life at any second, any point in time. I experienced the loss of all of my grandparents before I reached the age of 25. I have seen family members struggle through illness, through pain, but not until March 25th of 2010 did I witness the most tragic event in my life. I lost all four of my grandparents as I watched them struggle with illness, and they suffered. In February of 2003, my grandmother went in for what we thought was just routine surgery, but later we discovered that God had a completely different plan for her. I've seen family members struggle through illness and pain due to cancer. I had a cousin who was diagnosed with cancer while in the military and died at an early age of 31. I watched my grandfather battle cancer until God called him home. On March 25th of 2010, I lost one of my very best friends in a medical helicopter crash. As the storm was quickly approaching, the crew was needing to get back to their base. The pilot punched in the coordinates of Hospital Wings, Brownsville Base. But God had a different destination for them. At 6:05 a.m., Thursday, March 25th, 2010, God called home 3 heroic angels. They had made their final flight to heaven. Misty and I had an extraordinary friendship. Although we had our ups and downs, as many other friends all do, we were there for each other when times were challenging. After seeing our lives and how it is affected by tragedy through our country and our community, we must look at ways to deal with these instances. There are 5 deals of grief and sorrow. 1 is denial. Refusing to believe what has happened. This cannot happen to me. Anger. You're accusing others. You're trying to find someone else to blame. You're bargaining. You're asking for something in return. If you will just let this happen, I will do this. Depression. People deal with helpless, fearless guilt, no interest in life. I might as well just give up. Acceptance. Once it's time to face the loss, go on with your life, move on, get back to normal as positive as you can. Think of any tragic in your life that you may have already experienced. How did others help you? How did you handle the news? Did you experience any feelings that we mentioned? If so, now that you know the stages of grief, you can go out and help a loved one cope with tragedy. As you can see, tragedy can occur. You're not the exception to the rule. We have assessed some ways to put the past behind you and come to terms with your loss. Now, when life presents you with an unexpected tragedy, you can see that you are not alone. My prayer is that God will see you through any tragedy and misfortune that you may encounter.